We don't give ourselves enough credit for all the big, scary, uncomfortable things that we have faced in our lives. You have done it. You have literally navigated 100% of the challenges that have come into your world. You have literally faced every challenge in your life, and you have come through, and you are here listening to this podcast right now because you have. Let that be the evidence that you are capable of anything. Hello and welcome back. Welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. Hi guys, it's Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and today's going to be a great day. And today, I'm checking in with you. How are you doing, love? Maybe even just me asking that is bringing up some emotion, and allow it all, because there are not enough moments in our lives where we ask ourselves, how are you doing? There's been a lot going on. There's been a lot of change, a lot of fear, a lot shifting under our feet, and things can feel overwhelming and scary. And if you have been feeling that tremor under your own feet, I want you to know you're not alone. We've been going through a lot in the past, really couple of years, but it has accelerated in the past few months. In the States, in the global world, in our families, and definitely in medicine and dentistry. And you've had to navigate a lot, not just in terms of your profession, but in terms of your personal life, in terms of, kind of the ethos we're living in, the fear that's constantly present, the constant assault that we've had on our own stability. And that's overwhelming. And often we, in this profession of giving and caring and holding space for everyone else, we don't realize the energetic drain that it has on us holding people when they're overwhelmed and exhausted and drained and scared. Very often, healthcare providers, dentists, doctors, therapists, massage therapists, hell, anybody who is putting their hands on other people, we end up being those people that they lean into and open up a little bit more, especially if it's somebody who you see regularly, a patient who you've cared for years, maybe. You might be the safe space that they find to just unload everything that's happening to them in their lives, or even just a sounding board to reflect what's happening in the world. And we end up holding all of that for so many people. And then the weight, the responsibility we feel to also protect and navigate the story that we're holding for our kids. How am I going to explain the Epstein files to my middle school daughter? How am I going to explain invading Iran to my son whose best friend, uncle, lives in Iran? These are times that are heavy, not just in our own personal lives, but in the world. And we take on a lot as leaders, as healthcare providers, as women who really care about how other people feel. And maybe there are certain times that the news has impacted you personally. Maybe it's your family that's been impacted by ICE, or your best friend, or your team members. Or maybe it's your family that has been impacted by invading Iran. Maybe you're trying to navigate the story that you share with others. How, when people ask you about it, how are you going to respond? And all in that same time, you're trying to take care of patients, maybe run a business, provide an income to a whole team, and it's heavy. And so that's why I'm checking in with you today. How are you doing? How are you feeling? And it's so important, because when we don't check in with ourselves, we end up bypassing. And we end up accommodating and going to some common adaptive behaviors. And those common adaptive behaviors are the adaptations that we make when things get too heavy, when things feel too overwhelming. Maybe this is even happening in your personal life. And it happens when there's clarity of something that we're scared to face, when there's something that becomes very loud in our world, something that maybe we didn't even realize would be so scary. You know, the clarity you have when you realize, wow, I'm in a relationship that's no longer serving me. And then we disconnect. We maybe try to avoid even thinking about it because what that means feels too overwhelming to face. And so, you know, in addition to just asking you how you're doing, because just by asking yourself that, it kind of pierces through that, I also would love you to just ask yourself, how have you been hiding? How have you been avoiding facing and being present with the truths that are coming out? And they're not just coming out, as I mentioned, in the world globally. They're coming out in our professions. It has not been a secret for a very long time that the old insurance model is broken. It is broken. It has been broken. The old business model of medicine and healthcare is broken. This is not new. And as we get more and more clear in how it's falling apart, it can bring up a lot of fear. And what happens when that fear steps in is we sometimes dissociate. And what that can look like is, you know, dissociating into social media, scrolling on the phone. That's a very common one because I think a part of us tells ourselves that it's staying connected. It's staying on top of things. It's being aware of what's happening in the world. But the truth is, if you pay attention to your scrolling patterns and obsessions with the news or needing to check in, you realize that it actually isn't serving you and it's actually making you feel worse. It's actually becoming a distraction from where the world is really calling you, where your life is calling you. And we can use these kind of global events to excuse us, or excuse us is not a great word, but give us a reason to not be focusing on the things in our own lives that need better attention, that need more love, that need our acknowledgement. It's so interesting how we end up doing this in so many parts of our lives. We end up really obsessing on our teenager's journey when there's really something happening in our marriage or in our practice. You know, maybe you're noticing, geez, this has come to a head with my office manager. And I have been ignoring this conversation with her for a very long time. And all of a sudden, the war in Iran becomes very important. And we start focusing on it. And you're really, really studying it and paying attention and keeping up to date and avoiding facing a different calling in your life because that feels overwhelming. I was speaking to a beautiful woman in dentistry a couple weeks ago, and she's really been feeling like her business is just bleeding money. She works so hard. She works 5 days a week. She owns her practice. She has 2 associates. They're all working so hard, and it's barely profiting. And the money is always an issue, and they're doing beautiful work, really high-end dentistry. And what she noticed in her practice is she's bleeding with the insurance companies. Doesn't matter what she does in terms of her fee structures or where she tries to save or whether or not she hires a 3rd associate, it's the compensation from the insurance companies that's so inadequate that she is just working harder and harder and harder and barely making it and feeling that stress all the time. And all of a sudden, she's become obsessed with the Epstein files. And yes, it's so sad. And yes, I do not want to minimize the importance of us being aware of what's been happening for decades that we have just not been aware of. And the trafficking of young women is not something to turn a blind eye on. And right now is a moment in this beautiful woman's life that she needs to pay attention to what's happening in hers. She has a new awareness, a realization that of a responsibility, of an opportunity in her own life to ease the bleeding in her own life. And that fear of facing that is soothed or supported by disconnecting from the truth in her own life and really numbing out on all the things happening around the Epstein files. And the Epstein files, by the way, I also don't want to minimize this because I want to be very clear that this might be triggering something in us as women, in you. Perhaps some sexual assault in your past, perhaps a time where you weren't listened to or believed, where you've felt used and no one would hear you and your story. And this can bring up a lot of painful feelings. And it's so important to be paying attention to those as well. And where you may be using the world's events as a mask to paying attention to what's happening in your own life, where you do have agency, where you do have power to make some really difficult decisions. And those areas in your life that require you to make these decisions also require you to be very, very loving of yourself and to check in where maybe for a while now you've been checking out. And I say this with so much love because I know that in my own life that has been true. I had this beautiful orthodontic practice. It was so successful. It was so much fun. I was loving the ortho finally. I mean, as many of you know my story, I went through a time where owning a business was such a stress for me. And when I started doing the inner work and taking care of myself, finally, I had opened this Scratch Start practice and it was just a dream. It was successful. It was financially abundant. Treating patients every day was so fun. My team, I felt supported by. I felt comfortable navigating when inevitably something went wrong, which it happens. You know, a team member leaves or the suction falls apart or, you know, we have an unhappy patient or family. And I felt so comfortable navigating those beautiful shifts and changes because I had done the inner work and I had been looking at how to rediscover, reclaim my power, my sovereignty. And I turned a blind eye on a relationship with my partner, my business partner. It was getting more and more uncomfortable to have conversations. We had really experienced years of so much growth and appreciation of each other. And there was a little discomfort that started sneaking in. And so I started diverting my attention away from that and really focusing on some family drama and really in a place where it was not my place. I had no power or control or say on a conversation happening in my family, but that suddenly became so interesting because I was avoiding facing the truth of what was coming alive for me. And I'll share this with you. When I had the courage, I will give this beautiful respect as well, because we both needed to have the courage to have the conversation and recognize that that relationship needed to dissolve. It had lived its life, and now there was a need for a shift and a change. When we had the courage to have that conversation, that's when beautiful things happened. And I'm not saying that it was easy to traverse that shift in dissolving our partnership. Man, that was really painful and it was difficult. And there were many nights of tears and heartbreak, really. And what I learned was that when I lean into the truth, when there's that little whisper inside of me, that clarity that comes about, when I pay attention to it instead of running away from it, that's when change happens. And we grow and we learn from that situation. You know, the Epstein files is a great example. There was a whisper that people were ignoring for so long. Women were coming out. They were asking to be seen. They were speaking up, and we were getting distracted as a society by a million other things. And then finally one day that discomfort became too loud to where we couldn't ignore it anymore. And now facing it is what gives us the ability to move through it and beyond it. And we can learn from these situations in our own personal lives. How are you doing? How are you holding space for yourself? And what is that adaptive behavior that you can notice in yourself that is avoiding leaning into an uncomfortable truth that really needs your attention and your love? And can you hold the promise that when you do, you are capable of navigating it? You are. We don't give ourselves enough credit for all the big, scary, uncomfortable things that we have faced in our lives. You have done it. You have literally navigated 100% of the challenges that have come into your world. You have. You have literally faced every challenge in your life, and you have come through, and you are here listening to this podcast right now because you have. Let that be the evidence that you are capable of anything, truly anything. And I think in the past, when someone used to say that to me years and years ago, I thought of that as ambition. Like, wow, I can conquer the world. I can be anyone and anything I want to be. And yes, that's true. And I'm giving you permission now to recognize it's true in terms of your capacity to emotionally navigate any discomfort as well. And it starts with checking in with you. How are you doing? And if the answer is, Tarryn, I am a wreck, allow it, baby. Allow it. Let yourself cry. Let yourself scream. Let your emotions be felt. That is your greatest superpower. It is not true that as a strong, powerful leader, you have to hold it all together. In fact, it is the opposite. Strong, powerful leaders who navigate their families, who navigate their businesses, who navigate the care that they're offering to their patients. It is a requirement of us to feel our feelings so that we can face uncomfortable changes. And it is coming in the medical and dental world. We've been seeing it for a long time. Maybe you've already faced really uncomfortable things in your practice and you realize, wow, this old model is no longer sustainable. Maybe you've noticed it in your own body where you realize, wow, this hustle and force and working ridiculous hours and giving to everyone else and never taking time for me and feeling guilty all the time when I say no is no longer sustainable. And waking up to that truth is scary. It is. And maybe that truth has just been awakened in you of a realization in your own life of something that is no longer sustainable and that you no longer can tolerate. And is it time to stop numbing out, to stop distracting, and to sit with the discomfort of what you need to face? Because that's where your power really lies, babe. You are so powerful. You really do have that in you. You are capable of facing something that feels very uncomfortable to face. And when you do, magic happens. The magic is you then get to transmute that discomfort into something really beautiful. And this is the really exciting part about it. It's not just beautiful, it's more beautiful than you could have imagined. On the other side of every challenge I've ever had to face, every single one, I mean deep, heart-wrenching, emotionally draining, punch to the gut kind of pain, every single time when I have allowed myself to go there, to feel those feelings and to face that change, on the other side has been something more beautiful than my imagination could ever have fathomed. Every time. So I'm checking in with you today. How are you doing? And if you need to fall down in a pool and cry and fall apart, do, babe, do. Because maybe that's the one thing you've been avoiding. And the courage and the clarity that lies on the other side of that willingness to feel through whatever you're facing right now is more powerful than you realize. I'm holding so much space for you. I am holding so much love for you. You are not alone, and everything you're feeling in your life right now is valid. Every single emotion. And you are worthy and capable of feeling it all, because on the other side of it is something more incredible than you're even aware of. Sending you so much love today. Thank you for listening to the Business of Happiness podcast. If this episode brought you new perspective and value, I invite you to subscribe so that you catch all upcoming episodes and leave us a review. And if you know of a friend or colleague who could benefit from this perspective, share this episode with them and empower their day. For more information about the Business of Happiness and the Radical Happiness for Practitioners course, find me on www.thebizofhappiness.com. See you there.